set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land we celebrate music. In this land we celebrate games. In this land we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VGMbassy. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the VGMbassy. This is a show centered around video game music and the amazing online community of fans and podcasters that enjoy it. My name's Ed, and on each episode I'll take the role of Prime VGM Minister and invite a guest VG Ambassador onto the show to share with us their own video game music culture. Or I may share a part of my culture on a solo show. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a little bit since the last episode, but, like I said, we're slowing down as far as the embassy is concerned. We've got a lot of great shows coming up. We've got a great show today. I have a first-time VG Ambassador with me, and we're going to be talking about probably the most obscure game I've ever featured on the show, and I'm a fan of obscure stuff, so this one really takes the cake. But first of all, let's welcome to the embassy, all the way from Aqua City, Hammock from KVGM Radio. How are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. It's great to finally stop by the VGMbassy. I've got my notarized document from the Aqua City consulate, so I think we're good to go. I think everything's legal now.
Excellent. I'll hand that over to Logan and make sure your papers are verified.
Thank you.
If he sees any problems, we'll just detain you after the episode ends.
Okay, no problem.
So for those of you who don't know about KVGM Radio, it is a fun half-hour-long VGM podcast that, why don't you explain a little bit what you're all about?
Yeah, so I'm all about very chill, very laid-back, very smooth video game music. Like I said, it's half an hour every week, so it's good work commute music if you want to have something to kind of relax you on your drive into work. The music that I am usually attracted to, I tend to focus on the show, so it's all generations, all consoles, every composer you can think of. And yeah, it's just a fun way, and it's very much tailored after kind of like a 90s smooth jazz radio station. It's The Last Wave, and it's based on 94.7 The Wave, which was like an LA-based smooth jazz station, so it's a little silly, a little corny, but usually good tunes.
Yeah, for sure. There's always great tunes. I like to listen to it at the end of the day because it's just such a chill, cool down kind of a show. It just gets you in the mood to relax and get sleepy. Although some of your tunes lately have been a little more energetic, which I'm liking too. I tend to like the more energetic stuff anyway. Which is funny because when we were chatting about doing a show together, my initial idea was to have you bring some music that you enjoyed that you didn't feel fit on KVGM. And I was like, so, are there any games or any soundtracks that you really enjoy that, were a little bit too aggressive or a little too upbeat? And you were like, well, as a matter of fact, I've got this one. So what was your story behind this one? Well, A, what are we playing? And B, how did you discover this soundtrack?
Okay, so what we're playing is, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's Ioli Moeum, or Eol's Adventure. And it is a Korean MS-DOS game. Very random, and somebody had recommended me a track from the game for my show, and I listened to it, and it was a good track, and then I listened to the whole soundtrack, and I'm like, wow, I'm really digging this. It may not fit necessarily into my program and kind of the sound that I'm going for, but I loved all of the tunes. They're very catchy, and so I figured this would be a great soundtrack to explore. I hadn't heard anybody talk about this game. I had never heard of this game. It's brand new territory for me. It just seemed like a good fit.
Yeah, for sure. When you recommended it to me, I took a listen, just a little bit. I tend to, when somebody brings a soundtrack, I tend to like to give it a first listen, like on the show as we're listening. So I have an idea for the sound, and I've listened to a couple of the tunes as I've played the game myself a little bit, but a lot of these are going to be like fun surprises for me. But it's got this great FM sound, and a little bit is, smooth, jammy, but a lot of it, there's a lot of really fun guitar solos and some great percussion. It uses the YM3812 chip, which you might be more familiar with as the AdLib chip, which was a sound chip that was in a lot of the older Creative and AW32 sound cards back in the old days of MS-DOS and Windows 95. So we'll talk a little bit about the specifics of what you're listening to as we go throughout the show. But suffice to say, if you're a fan of, Genesis, Mega Drive, FM arcade music, you're definitely going to be hearing some familiar and awesome stuff today. So the game was published by Gameland and developed by Family Production. It was composed by Sung-Wook Moon and released for MS-DOS in 1995, and it never was released in English-speaking territories, as far as I know. Even though Family Production did make games that ended up coming out in the West, this one stayed specifically in the Korean territories. So it's a game that, like I said, unless somebody really recommended it to you or you got it by word of mouth, you would very rarely find this on your own and think it was worth playing at all. So I feel like we should get into our first track, and we'll listen to the title theme from the game. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about what kind of game it is and, how exactly these pieces of music fit into it. So let's break for the title theme from Eel's Adventure, composed by Sung-Wook Moon.
Alright, that was the title track to Eel's Adventure on the computer, MS-DOS.
Cool little tune, yeah, composed by Sung-Wook Moon. I like this one because I feel like it really sets up the type of sounds that we're going to be hearing for the rest of this show. I like how it's kind of split down the middle between kind of a rockin' back end, and then it's all kind of playful and fun up front, and the composer really handles both of those really well. What was your impression of this one?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, I love how happy this track starts out. Like here's joy and happiness all rolled up in a warm flour tortilla, and then that guitar hits, and Eel comes sliding in, he's shooting blue balls out of his hand, letting you know that this is his game, and he's about to go on an excellent adventure. For
sure, and this game is interesting because although the side-scrolling action is pretty simple, it's got some really well-done cutscenes. They're nicely animated. They kind of remind me of like some of the Sonic 3 stuff where you've got like a, very well rendered blue hedgehog just kind of animating and coming out of the screen. Like it's very similar to that. Eel's this very simple, almost entirely orange protagonist. He looks like, I don't even like a Fraggle of some sort almost, but he's wearing no clothes. And there's this evil enemy he looks kind of similar, but he's a little bit more spiky, like kind of werewolf style. And there's this really cool animation of him and his arm like swinging across the screen, and it's cool. So there's an interesting kind of dichotomy between the effort that went into the music and the cutscenes, and then less so on the gameplay, which I felt like was kind of backwards from most games, especially of that time. You didn't really see a lot of MS-DOS games from that era doing so much in terms of, flashiness. They were all about the simple graphics and more focus on the gameplay. So maybe Korea is just, they had a different culture towards game design at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
So let's listen to Stage 1-1, and I named the tracks based on the types of levels that they play in. So I'm calling this one Forest Outskirts. It's not the official title, but I wanted to give some sort of context to relate the music to the kind of level that you're playing through. So let's listen to that, and we shall return. Alright, that was Stage 1-1, Forest Outskirts, from Eel's Adventure. This is where we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. The gameplay music is really, really good and super varied. You're going to hear a whole bunch of different types of genres of music. Although I feel like this one borrows maybe from a popular Sega game. Any guesses on that one, Hammock?
Well, let's see. Sega games. I know Sonic the Hedgehog. Could it be that?
I think you nailed it.
All right.
I think you nailed it. I hear a bit of Sonic. I hear a bit of Sonic maybe mixed with like some Outrun. I feel like this would be a good KVGM song.
Yeah.
In general.
Definitely. I mean, it's a perfectly fun opening level music to set the stage. Nothing too crazy. It's just got a nice little beat.
For sure.
Pretty good.
Yeah, this one takes place, like I said, in the forest outskirts. It's there's some trees and some grass. There's some water behind you. The gameplay is actually, the more I think about it, the more it's very Mega Man-ish. You have a blue energy ball that you shoot out of your hands. You can jump, and if you press down and jump, then you do a slide, more or less. There's kind of a charge shot, but it's more like something you'd find in a Styanax. If you don't fire for a while, there's a little red dot at the top of the screen, and when it starts flashing, you shoot a more powerful energy shot. So you have all these kinds of video game tropes that all kind of revolve around like the Mega Man gameplay style. And the graphics don't remind me of Mega Man at all. The enemies don't remind me of Mega Man at all, with the exception of a few. There's a couple that kind of like throw 3 bullets at you instead of just shooting them straight, which is kind of like the hard hats in Mega Man. They do kind of a similar kind of thing. So I feel like the developers maybe were looking at that series of games for inspiration for this one. So just for some context, that's, if you're familiar with Mega Man, just change the graphics up to some cutesy anime style graphics, and you'll get a good handle on what you're looking at here.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I think we will get into our next track. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the sound chip that we're listening to, because I think the next one's a good example of explaining what this AdLib chip is all about. So when we return from the Stage 1-2 Deep Forest track. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
That was Stage 1-2 from Eel's Adventure, composed by Sung-Wook Moon.
Cool stuff. What'd you think of this one?
This was good. I mean, Stage 1-1 was the warm-up, and Stage 1-2 is putting those blue ball skills to the test. I mean, you're blasting dogs and plants and amphibians. Nothing to save from the magic blue balls.
Yeah, it's crazy. I also realized as I was watching some gameplay that you can also shoot upward, which when I was playing, I didn't even realize, and it probably would have helped me out quite a bit in the game. I was playing more Mega Man style, but I guess you have a multi-directional blue ball, which is fun.
Yeah, it's always good to be able to spread out your balls. But I mean, very fun track, very upbeat and happy, which is so far been kind of the theme of these tracks. But, things will change.
Yeah, for sure. I think things will definitely change. I like the sound of these tunes. They are very textured, and it's not, with FM music, texture in FM music tends to really rely on low bassy tones, like big FM sweeps, but this one gives a lot of texture to the lead instruments, which I think is very cool. Part of that is because the YM3812 is pretty powerful. It's an 11-channel FM chip, which has two different modes. So in melody mode, there's 9 individual audio channels, and it can produce tones on all of them. But you can switch it into rhythm mode, which means that you get 6 channels for tones, and then the other channels are for drum samples. So you can really switch back and forth on the fly which one you want to use per song. And I think it's kind of fun to kind of listen through this and see which mode the composer might be using for each song. And there are some pretty percussive heavy tunes in this soundtrack, and then you get a lot where there's a lot of really layered synths, and I feel like this one probably uses melody mode. It's got also an interesting aspect to each channel. It produces sine waves as a base, just like every single other FM chip, but then it can do like half and quarter sawtooth waves and like other pseudo waves that are kind of like in between a triangle and a sawtooth that a lot of the other chips can't. So like in this song particularly, you hear that lead synth that doesn't really sound like other FM synth leads that I've heard for the Genesis or the Sharp X68000 or arcades, and I think that's because they're using these kind of particularly and uniquely tuned FM channels to create these instruments that wouldn't be possible on other FM chips. So it's fun to listen to AdLib songs because you get that familiar FM sound with these kind of unfamiliar instruments hanging around with them. So it's a very unique chip, and one of the reasons why I like it so much. Yeah,
it provides a lot of variety that you don't quite get in a lot of Genesis tracks. And, you know, AdLib is something that I'm not super familiar with. I've featured a couple of tunes on my show, but this is something different. This is something I'm not quite used to, so it's nice hearing the variety in these tracks.
Yeah, I remember as a kid when I would play games on my old Gateway 2000 Windows 95 machine, if there was ever a DOS-based game that had a choice between like MIDI or Sound Blaster or AdLib chips for the soundtrack, I would always choose AdLib. For some reason, I just always loved the sound of this chip more than any of the other sounds. So it's always fun to be listening to songs and music that was specifically written for this chip.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of which, what do we have coming up next, sir?
Next, we have Stage 2-1, which I believe is the mine stage.
All right, so we got some underground exploration to do. We will be right back. Oh, that was a jam. That was Stage 2-1 Mine. And wow, I could listen to this on repeat for quite a long time before I got tired of it. What'd you think of it, sir?
Yeah, I like this track a lot. It's very chill, but also kind of dark and ominous, just like hanging out in a mine.
Yeah.
And then it has that nice little jam out session before the track loops again. That's so good.
Yeah, that part really reminded me of a lot of my buddy Dread, Trevin Hughes stuff. A lot of the stuff that he writes for the Genesis has that very like breakdown, super fast, like wanky solo kind of a sound to it. So his music popped right up in my head as soon as I heard that part. I like how Sung-Wook Moon uses specific A sections and B sections in a lot of his tunes. Like, that title screen really set the listener up for what they're going to be hearing throughout the rest of the game. And these songs aren't very long. A lot of them are only about a minute or so, maybe a minute 30 tops. So when you have music with two distinctive sections or more that flow well into each other, it really helps the listener if they're listening to the same loop over and over and over again, because it feels like listening to a couple of different songs, but all kind of in a cohesive package. And I think that's really the trope of a good composer and an experienced composer that is able to compose something like that, to keep your ears ready and listening and awake, and still be able to produce such short pieces of music without driving you mad after a while.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how experienced he was because, we couldn't find any more information on him outside of this game. So I'm curious if he has done any more, Korean-based games.
Yeah. My guess is that he at least, this isn't his first outing as far as composition goes, that he's either worked for TV or cartoons or commercial music or something before writing this, because this feels like the work of somebody with a lot of experience and a lot of skill. Family Production put out quite a few games, and we have credits for a lot of them. And I was able to kind of cross-reference games around this time that, he might have worked on, maybe even under an alias, but nothing even came close. Any of the aliases that worked on other Family Production games, their real names were later known. So, maybe this guy was just in for a part-time job, looking for some cash or something, and built it out of 20 or so awesome jams and went on his way.
Not a bad way to break in and break out.
Just kind of disappeared into the night with his guitar on his back.
That's the samurai spirit.
Exactly. All right, so no samurais here, though. What's our next track?
The next track is stage 2-2, and this is Minecart.
Yeah, Minecart Ride is, as far as the people I've seen on the web that have played this game and kind of reviewed it, this is kind of like the bane of all their existences. Hopefully this tune is a fun one to listen to, because I feel like a lot of people get stuck here. So let's take a listen. We'll be right back.
Alright, that was stage 2-2, the Minecart Ride. This is another quesadilla of a track full of everything you want. You're in the mine, you're riding around in the minecart. It's got that farty bass. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is probably stage 3-1, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a fun one.
Agreed. It's very fun. It didn't really remind me of minecarts at all. Maybe more like riding around in a Corvette with your top down rather than a topless minecart. But it definitely has a feeling of motion and momentum, which I like.
Yeah, totally.
It has that cruising kind of feel. And the minecart level in this game it's very, very simple. You're essentially like on an auto-scrolling minecart, and you're going pretty fast, enemies coming at you that you have to jump over, and it's more or less kind of like an obstacle course kind of a deal. The problem that most people have that have played this game and reviewed it was that the game's scrolling is not smooth at all. It's a very kind of janky, choppy game. So couple that with very fast forward automatic motion, and you get a very frustrating experience, because if you're trying to jump over enemies and you're pushing the button in between frame updates, it doesn't always register. So there's a lot of control issues that go on with this level. So a lot of folks kind of get stuck here and end up turning the game off. If you do want to get good at this level, you're probably going to be listening to this song for quite a few hours. Hopefully not that many, but I like this. I feel like they really captured the kind of cave aspect of the music in Stage 2-1, the last track that we listened to. And this one, for some reason, feels like a song that you might listen to when you're emerging from a cave, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You're heading out into the light of day, and who knows what you're going to face next.
Yeah, exactly. There are bosses in this game as well, and they are pretty well drawn. Very easy to beat from what I understand. There's frogs and dragons, and there's some very simple kind of mid-boss and boss music that play alongside them that we're not really going to share on the show. So after you beat the minecart ride boss, you emerge, and it seems like you're not going back up out of the mine, but maybe further down into it, because Stage 3-1 is otherwise known as Volcano 1. So we think we're going to hear some hot and sultry tunes coming up?
Ooh, yeah. Can't wait.
I hope so. All right, so let's take a listen to 3-1 Volcano 1, composed by Sung-Wook Moon.
That was Stage 3-1, Volcano 1, and this has to be the scariest of the stages so far. When I hear this track, it sounds like running away, like you're running away from something that's chasing you, and in this case it's probably lava, since this is a volcano stage. Reminds me a little bit of like Maniac from Flashdance, kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah, okay.
When it starts to hit in, but again, it has kind of a funny little ending. There's kind of this glimmer of hope at the end before the track loops. I'm saying, yo, turn around, face your fears, face the lava, beat it off with the blue balls. But it's a pretty interesting track, pretty cool, but just has kind of this running energy to it.
On a scale of Popsicle to Reaper Pepper, how hot would you say this track is?
You know what? I'm going to give it a 5, because it's not super hot, but it's not super cool.
Yeah.
It's right there in the middle, so I guess that would be like a roasted jalapeno or something, but it has its moments.
Yeah, it's got a kind of like a disco feel. I'm again getting classic Sega arcade vibes, like some real Hiroshi Kawaguchi kind of stuff, especially in those bass lines. So, maybe Sung-Wook Moon was taking inspiration from like Space Harrier or Outrun or something like that. It could be just the FM chip is similar to what he used as well, and I'm getting vibes off of that. But I don't mind, because Kawaguchi's an amazing composer, so if he's gonna, ape anybody, you may as well choose him. But I like this. I like the galloping bass, that disco feel, like I said. It does feel like running away, but it almost feels like a confident running away. Mm-hmm. Like when you see like a Looney Tunes character like escaping danger, but they're also like in the back of their head, they know that the danger wasn't really that dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Eel's probably kind of like sauntering away from this oncoming lava. Maybe there's a bit of intensity to it, but I didn't get as much of a fear, I think, as you did. That's interesting.
Eel is a interesting character, so he's probably used to this by now. He's already been through 4 or 5 levels, so at this point, yeah, he sees the lava. It's no big deal. He can just slip and slide away.
If you can survive that minecart ride, you can survive anything.
That's totally.
However, the volcano is not done yet. I mean, we called it Volcano 1, so that would imply the presence of a Volcano 2, which happens to be the name of Stage 3-2. So maybe this one's a little bit hotter. Maybe he's deeper into the volcanic lava, and we're going to hear some sultry keyboard or guitar solos here. What do you think?
I hope so. I'm ready for it.
All right, let's take a listen to it. We'll be right back.
That was Stage 3-2 Volcano 2, and this track is one of my favorites so far. It's got this weird dark funk to it. I don't know, is that a thing? Is dark funk a genre?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because if it wasn't, I was going to credit Sung-Wook Moon for making it a thing, but it's got a little bit of that New Jack swing. It's cool. Doesn't necessarily remind me of a volcano, but it is pretty spicy.
Yeah, spicy is a good word for it. And I'm glad you brought up New Jack Swing because I was thinking the same thing. It's got that swung out beat like most New Jack Swing tunes do. I really liked that lead synth too. That solo was really, really cool. And just felt like it oozed swagger and confidence, and as you're progressing in the game and the game environments are getting more and more dangerous, the music seems to be getting like more and more confident, which is interesting. It feels like maybe Eel's really getting into his groove. The player themselves is probably getting into their groove as well, so this music might be matching their attitude. So in that respect, I feel like it's a pretty good choice. This level, from what I've seen, has a lot of really intricate, like 1 block wide jumps that you need to like do a lot of skilled platforming with. And again, coupled with the control issues and the janky frame rate of the game, is probably a very difficult time for the player. So I feel like if I were in this level and kind of having some difficulty with it, this track would certainly keep me motivated to keep playing until the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would purposely die, just so I could keep hearing this song, because it's such a jam. And I'd probably lose anyways, even if I was trying, but at least you have this as kind of a consolation prize.
Yeah, absolutely. This was not Family Productions' first game at all. This is actually quite late in their production run. And it's interesting, their games were all sorts of different genres. RPGs, cinematic platformers, shoot-em-ups. They had these 2 mascots that was kind of like for a kid's platformer called P and Giddy, and they appeared in like 3 or 4 different games. They appeared briefly at the beginning of this game in one of the cinematic cutscenes, and a lot of their games, I guess maybe depending on what their budget was like, who was doing the development, would borrow, quote-unquote, borrow graphics from other games, from like the SharpX 68000 and the Genesis. There's a game called Illusion Blaze where the first level is completely ripped off of the first level of Last Resort, and they didn't even bother to recolor it. So it's interesting. As far as I can tell, all of the graphics and art in Eel's Adventure are original. I just wonder why some of these games, maybe they just had tight production budgets, maybe they figured that nobody would know. I don't know what Korea's copyright laws were at the time. I know, some countries like China have very, very loose copyright laws where they can directly copy another country's works and kind of get away with it. So maybe that was the case, but if you go to HG 101, Hardcore Gaming 101 on the web and look up Family Production, they have a whole 2-page spread on little reviews of nearly every single game they've released. So I'll add that link in the show notes if you guys want to go check out some more games by Family Production. I think you'll be surprised at the quality, especially considering the time and the platform they were released on. And many of these games you can head over to like myabandonware.com and just download the files and play them using DOSBox or an old DOS computer and kind of uncover a whole treasure trove of neat little games that you probably never knew existed.
Cool.
Yes, sir. All right, so we move out of the volcano and now we're moving into I call it the Crystal Caves because it's mostly rocky. It looks like there's some clouds or... I thought it was ice originally, but it seems to be kind of like that gem cut style shape that you don't really see ice crystals in. So I'm assuming they are gem type crystals. So there's 2 Crystal Caves levels, day and night. Stage 4-1 takes place during the day. So let's take a listen to that tune now. Again, composed by Sung-Wook Moon. Welcome back. That was Crystal Caves Day, stage 4-1 from Eol's Adventure for PC-DOS. And wow, this really brought the mood down, especially from that kind of rockin' Volcano 2 track. I enjoyed this one. It feels very crystal-y, What do you think?
Yeah, when I first heard this track, I assumed it was an underwater level, but it's kind of close. It's Crystal Cave, but the track is so bubbly. It has kind of that dripping sound, which I guess could be from like the stalactites in the cave.
Yeah.
And, I love me some good drips. And then it has that cute little lullaby tune right before it loops. So yeah, this was a cool one. Very low-key and chill, but really kind of cute too.
I kind of would have pegged this for like a game over or a high score tune if it wasn't introduced as a stage tune. It has that kind of like sleepy game over, this is where the game ends kind of a song.
Yeah.
That, you might get on like Little Nemo or what was that other one? gimmick has a kind of a tune like that.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting to be playing an action title with this very kind of chill bell pad, almost like a mallet instrument lead. So fun stuff. I wonder what Crystal Cave's Night sounds like. Maybe it's a little jazzier.
You would think so.
I would think.
Yeah, you would think so.
It's like Crystal's After Dark. So let's take a listen to that one. We'll be right back.
All right. That was Stage 4-2, Crystal Cave's Night, otherwise known as the Ballad of Eel. I mean, this is the prog rock anthem that we never knew Eel needed.
This one threw me for a loop. I was not expecting to hear anything like this. Sung-Wook Moon's really showing off their chops as far as composition goes. This soundtrack runs all sorts of different genres and sounds. This was probably my favorite one so far. I don't know, between this one and Volcano 2, which one would you prefer the most?
I'm leaning towards the Volcano 2 because it has a little bit more of that funk that I typically trend towards, but this is definitely, rocking. I really like it. I don't typically play a lot of rock tracks on my show, but this has the rhythm, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I got a little bit of Tim Fallon vibe from this. A little bit of like that Jethro Tull influence that Fallon likes to throw into his songs.
Yeah, totally.
When it started, I was like, okay, I think he's trying to kind of give the impression of like an acoustic guitar, and there's like a pan flute going on. I'm like, this is really chill. This feels like a Crystal Cave. And then those electric guitars come in, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on? And it was a surprise, but it was a pleasant surprise. Like, I was jarred in a really, really good way, and then it just kept improving, and the flute would come in over the guitars. The percussion was simple but effective. All around, just a really cool piece. I think this is the shining gem in the collection for me so far, but we've still got a couple more tunes to get through. So the next level is technically 5-1 Clockwork City Day, but we're not going to play that one because I think I know why you skipped it. It's very, very simple. It's like a one-instrument melody, kind of playing like a very simple kids tune. It didn't really get my goat at all. So what do we got coming up next?
So we've got stage 5-2, which was Clockwork City Night. So things are about to get a little more interesting than in the daytime.
Yeah, this is the second to last world of the game, so stakes are definitely getting higher. Let's take a listen. Clockwork City Night, a very quirky tune, probably the one that most sounds like the level that it's being played in, at least in my opinion. So far, I got kind of a Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh kind of feel to this one. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. It has that 80s synthwave pop song vibe to it. And when I first heard this, it sounded like Eel in a Robot Factory. I mean, it's real weird, but, you know, with all these tracks, it's very catchy, which I like.
I like the robotic kind of a feel, and that really staccato solo in the middle sounds very alien or like artificially made. Sung-Wook Moon's got a lot of very performative solos in these tunes, and they did their best to make this solo sound like it was programmed and quantized artificially. And so if that's the feeling they were going for, I think they really nailed it. And I think that gives further credence to the skill that they have, and why I think this definitely isn't their first outing making music for a game, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It really shows their sophistication, if you can say that, when it comes to just putting these melodies together and really changing up the game a little bit.
Exactly. All right, so we are kind of rounding out the show. Next world is the Boss Rush world with a couple of kind of generic tracks that we're not going to be playing too much of. There's the Plains Boss Rush and the Old Castle Boss Rush, but the Boss 2 track at the end of the game has some really cool solos in it. So let's take a listen to Boss 2 Final Form from Eol's Adventure.
That was Boss 2 Final Form from Eol's Adventure, and this is exactly what I want my final boss music to sound like. You know, it starts off with a little Corey Hart, I wear my sunglasses at night, and then it goes balls to the wall, guitar solo, because, you know, dark wizards are wicked, so this begs the question, will Eol's little blue balls be enough?
It sounds like they would be. I mean, if you attribute this solo to Eol and not to the enemy, I think his blue balls have definitely splattered the enemy all over the wall, and I don't think he'll be coming back again anytime soon. Caught me totally off guard. I remember listening to this kind of briefly as I was putting the soundtrack together for the show, and kind of forgot about how intense that B section was on this tune. It goes from just a kind of a rhythmic jamming piece to, I don't even know. I don't think people can play guitars that fast.
No,
at least not your average Joe.
And, you know, at this point in the game, I mean, this is it. So all that confidence is built up in little Eol, and now he's supercharging those blue balls, and this track is supercharged, for sure.
I wonder, it doesn't really explain too much about what Eol is trying to accomplish in this game. I think there's a small bit of story on the game's webpage, but it was like the game's webpage doesn't exist anymore, so you have to get to it through the Wayback Machine. Let's see what it says. Okay, so one day some strange light fell to the beautiful island where Eol lived. Then with violent movement, the earth broke into two pieces and bad air was spread over the world. Almost all flowers and animals was dead, and the darkness fell over this peaceful island. Under this situation, Eol decided to find the reason, and he found it quickly. But it was a wicked wizard, Cariol, as our expectation. Can Eol beat him off?
It's the $1,000,000 question. I think he can.
Considering how many blue balls he has,
Yes.
I mean, he'd probably do a pretty good job.
Oh, boy.
Man, and the ending kind of ties it all together. There's a nice ending cinematic to the game, which I watched, and I feel like the music goes very well with it. So when you're listening to this ending tune that we're going to play as our final track, keep in mind that it is part of a cutscene, so it has kind of more of a cinematic feel. So let's take a listen to that, and we'll be right back to carry out the show. right, folks, you just listened to the ending of Eel's Adventure, composed by Sung-Wook Moon, released in 1995 for DOS platforms, specifically in Korean territories. And like I said, it takes place during a cutscene, so there's more of a cinematic movement to this tune than a lot of the other tracks that we've been listening to. What was your impression, Hammock?
When I first heard this track, as it was opening, my mind started creating lyrics. So I was thinking, "Eo, don't go away. Eo, you saved the day." There's only some of the lyrics that are possible with this ending track. It's a little wistful. I mean, this opening part's like, Eo, we had so much fun together. Why does it have to end? And in fact, it doesn't have to end because they made a sequel to the game.
What?
Called The Adventure of Eel and the Fantastic Island. It's a point-and-click experience that you don't want to miss.
Interesting. I wonder how point-and-click works on a Korean-developed game. Probably very difficult for English-speaking people to play, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would imagine. And I don't believe Sung-Wook Moon had anything to do with the music for the second game. I didn't hear any of the music at all, so who knows? It could be really great, could not be so great, so another day, another topic.
Yeah, still interested in hearing that, so maybe I'll give it a listen, and if it's worthwhile, we can share a little bit in the future. I was watching the cutscene for the ending, and so I hadn't read the story about the beginning of the game until just now when we shared it before the track played. And it makes perfect sense now. So when you beat the final guy, Cariol, so what I did was I used Google Translate, and because all the text is in Korean at the bottom of the screen under the cutscene, so, hold your phone up to the screen and it kind of like vaguely translates the words for you as they scroll by. And the gist I got was that when the world, or Eel's planet, split in two, they kind of mirrored each other. So this Cariol, dark wizard that you're fighting against, is really Eel's evil counterpart. So when you defeat him, they kind of meld back together again. And the world ends up healing itself because of... I guess Eel and Cariol were the two linchpins of each side of the planet. So once they meld, the rest of the world melds, and the world is saved. Ta-da!
Yeah, that's sweet. I like it. Good way to end it.
Yeah. Good way to tie it all together. Maybe that's why there's some, like a day-night. Maybe it's not Crystal Cave's day and Crystal Cave's night. Maybe it's Crystal Caves on each side of this split planet,
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense, because they're very similar looking to each other, but, one is darker and one is lighter, so that's very cool. I like it.
Yeah, and that plays off in the music as well. And you have kind of the lighter, happier tunes during the day, and then you have some of those darker, more ominous tunes at night.
Yeah. Hammock, thank you so much for sharing the soundtrack with us. This was really cool. I feel like this was a nice change of pace on the show to kind of let the music take the reins and be really front and center, because if any soundtrack deserved to be front and center, it's this one. It's got some really cool stuff in it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast, and, it's a long time coming, so I'm happy to be here and happy to share this cool little gem of a soundtrack with you.
For sure. Next time we get together, we should, maybe do some more relaxing ones, or we can go totally the opposite route and play only death metal VGM.
Oh, yikes. Maybe. We'll see.
Probably more the former than the latter, I think.
I think that's a safe bet.
But if folks want to listen to KVGM Radio or find you on social media on the web, where can they go?
Well, we are on all the usual listening places: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. We've got a website, kvgmradio.com, where you can go and download all the shows, past and present. We're on Twitter at KVGM Radio. And yeah, those are the main places to reach out if you want to get in touch.
Awesome. I'll drop all of those links in the show notes. So if you are not familiar and would like to check it out, head over to the VGMbassy.com and you'll see all those linky poos there that you can click on to your heart's content. And please give our friend here a like and a subscribe. I would like to also thank Indira J for the art and Trevin Hughes for the soundtrack theme song. You can find us as well on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc., whatever platform you're listening to the VG Embassy on. If you do like our show, please give us a rating and a review. That helps out quite a bit when people are looking for new cool podcasts to listen to. You can find me on Twitter at the VGMbassy, and you can check out our Patreon site at patreon.com/thevgmbassy. Speaking of our Patreon patrons, I'd like to thank all of our lovely patrons, starting with our tourist level: Cameron Childs, aka Bruce Irons of the Mad Gear Gang, Daryl Bowers, aka The Last Recon of VGM Fight Club, Dan Lawton, and Chris Murray. Our VGM series: Chris Myers, Ben the Dyad Dishman from The Dyad Presents, a VGM podcast, who just released a new episode after like a year or more of being gone. So welcome back to the podcast sphere, Mr. Dyad. Chris Steenerson from the VGM Jam podcast, and Jordan Worma from the Table to Stage podcast, as well as Ganon11, aka Mike Stark from the Norwalk Gamer Symphony Orchestra, and Kyle Krull. Our audio attaché members: Cameron Worma, Carlos from the Heroes 3 podcast, and Scott McElhone. Our special agent tier: Volt Supreme from Volt Supreme's VGM Dream Stream Machine, and Ryan Steele. And our VG ambassadors: Frankly Zappa, and of course, the patron saint of all VGM podcasts, Alex the Messenger from The Messenger Presents, a VGM Journey podcast. Hammock, thank you once again for hanging out with me, and thank you for sharing this really cool soundtrack.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope we will be able to do many more shows in the future. All right, so we will be back next episode. I know that I promised this at the end of last episode, but scheduling got all screwy. So I did announce last episode that I would be getting together with Dan Lawton for a show on hack and slash games. And so as far as it goes, if everything works out, that will be the next episode that we will be releasing. So look forward to that in probably about a month or so. All right, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Keep listening to awesome VGM.